Hello and welcome to the Healing Insight podcast, episode 28, with me, Sarah Hunt.
And me, Jez Hunt.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Here we are again. And how is it up in the lovely Leicestershire, Jay?
It is humid and warm up in the
Yes,
lovely
it is here
Leicestershire.
too.
So, yeah, I mean, it's nice that we haven't got that really hot weather we had before, which was it was an interesting. But then again, are we ever in England? Are we ever happy with the weather?
I don't think we are, to be honest.
Oh, it's
We moan when
raining.
it's too hot. We
Oh,
moan when it's raining. We moan when it's cold.
yeah.
Um, yeah. But I
It,
like the weather. I like the changes in the weather. I like the heat and the sun. The humidity, don't like quite so much. But I also like the winter. I love it when we get snow. We don't get snow often enough these days. And when we have the real hoarfrosts, I think it makes the world look very beautiful.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, are we ever satisfied? I don't know that we are.
But no, the season's very important, and I love all of them. I mean, I think I agree. In some ways, I prefer the winter. Autumn's my favourite out of
I
all
love
of
the
them.
colours of the autumn.
Yeah, autumn's my favourite, and I love spring coming out of winter. Summer's probably, if I were to have to put them in order, summer's probably my least favourite. But it has its place and it's lovely.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
no, it's all
It
good.
reminds us of change, doesn't it?
It
And
does.
how everything's always changing,
Change
which
is
we discussed
inevitable.
previously. Yeah. But today's topic is anger.
Arr,
It'll look at it. Anger.
really?
Um, yeah. So
Here
I
we
have
go.
to say, I was a very angry person when I was younger. There was always a lot that made me angry and frustrated, and I still have moments when I get frustrated with things. Um, but anger is an emotion that can create all sorts of horrible situations. But it can also sometimes give you the strength to deal with something that perhaps you've struggled to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, so there's kind of good things and bad things with anger. I think it's the way that you handle it, it's the way that you express it that's important. Um, because you don't want it to be destructive, and it can be very destructive if you're not careful.
Yeah, it can be very self destructive and it can be destructive to others,
Definitely.
depending how you channel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And my way of dealing with my anger was actually to attend karate classes, and that was the way when I was younger, that I actually was able to channel my anger and to kind of clear it in a way that worked for me at the time, and keep my stress levels down. And certainly people that are very stressed, and I experience this, if you're very stressed, it's very easy to get tipped over the edge into to anger if something triggers you. Um, but but anger, when you're angry, you're not in your heart. I feel you're not in your heart.
Okay, I was just seeing how I felt about
And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't experience anger, and it doesn't mean that you should let things go without saying something because it's made you cross. But it's the way that you deal with it, it's the way that you allow yourself to experience it. And if we allow ourselves to get really angry, it moves us out of our heart, and then we say things and do things that we probably shouldn't. Whereas if we can take that moment to calm down, and certainly when I was dealing with children when they lived at home years ago, if I got angry, or if one of them got angry, my way of dealing with things was to be right, time apart, let's calm down, and then we can deal with the situation. Because if you're in an angry state, then you spark off each other, and that's not, it's not helpful. It's learning to recognize when your anger's starting to come up to the surface, so that you can kind of nip it in the bud and drop back into your heart. And when we're being heart centered, we learn to let go of things that perhaps if we weren't in our hearts we wouldn't let go of. It's kind of knowing which battles to actually fight
Mm-hmm.
and which ones to let go of.
I think there's a few things in this. The first is that like vibration attracts like vibration. So if someone, if you're in a good mood or whatever, and your partner comes home and they're in a bad mood and they start getting all, oh, I've had a rubbish day at work and rah, 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 it can bring you down. It can pull up the anger within you, particularly if they then start taking it out on you, because we go into defensive mode. And so it's tied up in the human form with fight or flight. So the whole
Mm,
point of anger is to increase the adrenaline flow and the oxygen to the muscles, and to either run or to have the strength to fight. You said at the beginning, sometimes it can give us the strength to move through something. So absolutely. The trouble is that if somebody is angry, firstly that can ignite the anger within us if someone's being angry to us, towards us. The other thing is that when you go into anger, you go into reaction, because, again, part of the fight or flight response, you go into reactive mode. So you're not thinking, you're not in that place of, is what I'm saying relevant? Is it kind? And is it necessary? You're in that place of just reacting and rah, just to get it out. And you're not looking at the bigger picture. And I think something else that you said as a child, so my way of you may remember this actually, my way of particularly in my teens and early 20s was squash, of releasing stress, and I
yeah.
used to play squash 3 times a week with you sometimes. And as we get older, what I've noticed is I don't get angry as much anyway. I think we
Yeah.
are much more tolerant to, actually, that doesn't matter, that's just whatever. Whereas when we're younger, we don't necessarily understand to that level, that
Mm,
actually the things we're getting angry about don't matter. So when you understand that what somebody else does or says towards you is actually their issue, it's a projection or it's a reflection, or whatever. Yes, there might be a learning in there, but it's their stuff, not yours. Then fine. You want to be angry at me, you go and be angry at me, but just go and do it somewhere else, rather than getting dragged into that whole anger environment, that anger energy
mm. Yeah, and
that can
sometimes
escalate.
because the universe is a mirror for us. Sometimes if you've got somebody that's a really angry person that's kind of connected with you, it might just be to flag up in you that you've still got stuff
Anger issues.
there, anger issues there, and it might not be a major issue for you, but the universe is just saying to you, just remember, you need to look at this, you need to look at that, because you have anger issues. They just don't appear as often as they perhaps used to. And I would agree that as you get older, I certainly don't lose my temper anything like I did when I was a lot younger in my 20s and what have you. I don't fight. And I did used to kind of fight a lot of battles that probably I didn't need to. Probably I should have looked at and gone, you know what? It's not worth it. But where I was on my journey at that point in time, I felt I had to, and I let things trigger me and upset me. But having done a lot of work on myself and having kind of matured over the last however many years, I find that it takes a lot to really trigger me these days. I don't get angry like I used to, and usually I can recognize when something's upsetting me, so that I deal with it rather than allow it to fester and then become a big problem.
Yeah. There's um, there's a thing around boundaries with anger. So we can get angry because someone's overstepped our boundaries, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's their fault, because we may not have asserted our boundaries, or clarified our boundaries with that person in the right way. So there can be an element of that. So it can be a boundary issue. It could also be, and in I think in a lot of cases that I've dealt with other people over the last few years, there's a lot of ego involved in anger. There's a lot of okay, let me give you an example. So if you think of a road rage situation, whether you've had one happen to you or not, doesn't matter. But so you're driving along and someone pulls in front of you. So you're on the motorway and someone overtakes you, pulls in front of you, or cuts in front of you in a dangerous way. I'm not just talking about, in a filter lane or anything. So in a dangerous way. And you respond to that by just flashing your lights. So you're not angry, you're not anything. You're just flashing your lights to say, oh, hang on a minute, that was a bit. And they slam their brakes on, they get out of the car, they start shouting at you. Then that person who's got angry is doing so, or can be doing so, quite often because there's something deep down that they know they've done wrong. They know that they shouldn't have done what they did,
Mm.
but they then project it onto the other person of, how dare you flash at me, what's your problem, blah blah blah. And that whole anger comes up because there's an thing going on here. How dare you tell me how I should or shouldn't drive? That's probably one of the easiest ways to explain what I mean. So
Yeah.
so anger can be an ego thing. It can also just be a trigger, from a gestalt. So when we first experience an emotion, so going back to the womb, cell, whatever level, when we first experience an emotion, our subconscious mind might not know what to call it, but kind of labels it and says, right, this emotion has happened and this thing has happened, this feeling. And when that feeling happens again, it's like, oh, we've had that before, that's here. And as we
Yeah.
go through, we then pick up that it's anger or sadness or fear or hurt or guilt, or happiness or joy or whatever it is. And as we go through life, our subconscious mind links these things together. So it's like, oh, anger, oh, anger, oh, anger. And it builds it up. So it's like building layers on an onion, if you like. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What can happen then in later life at some point is something really insignificant, relatively speaking, can be the spark that ignites all of that pent up anger
Yeah.
going back historically through your lifetime, to suddenly it all comes out. I mean, the classic, sort of kind of a joke, it's a cliche, I suppose, is the couple having an argument over one partner squeezing the middle of the toothpaste tube instead of the end of the toothpaste tube. At the end of the day, does it really matter where the toothpaste is squeezed? It's not a big thing, and yet it could be something like that that causes this massive row. But it's not about the toothpaste tube, it's the trigger of all of this anger that
The
hasn't been
layers.
released, the layers of anger that haven't been released
Mm.
through the lifetime. And one of the things I do with NLP is to clear residual or trapped emotion, of
Yeah.
anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, particularly. Um, and I know, we do it with healing as well. We release
Absolutely.
all of the
Yeah. It releases a lot of
negativity.
that negative
You
emotion,
know,
definitely.
anger has a place. It's not a bad thing in certain circumstances. It's one of our, as I say, it can lead to fight or flight. It can put us into that thing, that place of getting ready to either fight. So the anger gives us the strength to actually take on the person, or it gives us the strength to run away, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's when it becomes an unreasonable, proportionately unreasonable to the event that's happening, that it can be causing problems, and people get really angry. Can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I know when my children were small, when they used to have temper tantrums, I would pop them up in their bedroom and just get them to calm down. I'd say to them, it's okay to be angry and I still love you, but it's not okay with the behavior that you're displaying, and start lashing out and that kind of thing going on. so that they understood that it was okay to experience that emotion, because we need to experience all the different emotions, but we
Mm.
need to let them go, and not hold on to them. And it it's been very easy, I think, for humans to hold on to these emotions, from different experiences. And as you described, then they build up layers of it, and it sits there and it sits there and it sits there until something just tips the balance, and then there's an explosion. And we don't want to be in that situation where there's an explosion. It's it's turning around and saying, I don't like what you did, it's made me feel angry. And then saying to yourself, why do I feel angry?
Mm.
Why is it? What is it that's upset me about that? Why do I feel like that? So that you can kind of come to an understanding of what it is, and stop it from you know
Turning into
becoming an
resentment,
explosion, and
or
then becoming resentment.
yeah,
Absolutely. And you don't want resentment sitting underneath, because it just festers and festers and festers. um so it's having an awareness, isn't it, of how you're feeling, of what you're feeling, and then being willing to look at it and say to yourself, why do I feel like this?
yeah,
What is it about that situation that's made me feel angry?
yeah. And it might be a reflection of something that you need to look at. It
Yeah,
might be the other person's issue projecting what they need to look at onto you.
yeah,
But holding on to resentment, or holding on, being having resentment for 3 or 4 years, or 10 years or 20 years towards somebody, all you're doing is trapping that emotion inside you, that negativity inside you. And it's more likely then to manifest itself into something physical, some physical illness or problem, or you know
yeah,
depending where the energy gets trapped, it can cause all sorts of problems down the line. So we want to be releasing as much negativity as we possibly can every day, so that we
yeah,
are in this place of, that we talked in the last episode about, being in the now and being in the heart center. If you're in the now and in your heart center and coming from a place of love, then there is no place for anger in that moment, unless it's warranted and meant to be in that moment. Does that make
yeah.
sense? Because a lot of anger comes from something that happened in the past, or something that's been triggered because of something that happened in the past.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's actually, I hadn't really thought of it like that before, but yeah, yeah, it does feel right. Um, and if you're in the moment, then you should be able to actually have the discussion that's needed to stop that anger from becoming an issue, shouldn't you?
Yeah, because
To the
you
situation
respond to the
rather than react.
situation rather than reacting. So if you can take that step back, which is why what you said about, if particularly if two people are angry and they're having it, or potentially going to have an argument, the best thing you can do, if you're really both like that, is to take a step back. And so go off into different rooms. One of you go out for a walk, go into the garden. I don't know. Just don't stay together until you've had that time to calm down, because then you can get back into your heart center and you can actually then talk to each other rationally,
Yeah.
rather than,
And when you're angry, your perspective won't be a true perspective of what's gone on. And you can't, when you're really angry, you can't look at things from more than one perspective. It's almost like tunnel vision,
tunnel
isn't it?
vision. Yeah.
Um, and then you're just completely in react mode, and that's not healthy. Um, but when you are angry, and it's okay to feel that emotion, it's important to take a step back, allow yourself time to calm down, allow yourself time to go inward and understand why you feel angry, especially if it's an argument with two different people, so that between two different people, so that you can go to that other person and say, okay, this made me very angry, and this is why it made me very angry. And I understand that it's my stuff, or
Mm.
whatever it is, but then you can have a rational conversation that's heart led, rather than a throw-in of a war almost going on, with a big argument, and a lot of negativity being thrown backwards and forwards, and unpleasantness that doesn't need to be there, because we're all on a we're all on our own journeys, and different things will trigger different people, and understanding that it's giving us an opportunity for growth, it's giving us an opportunity to learn. When somebody makes us angry, it's giving us an opportunity for growth. But to understand that growth, we need to say to ourselves, why am I feeling like this?
Mm.
What is it really? What is it really that's triggered me, or that's been triggered, that I need to look at? Is it the way that people have treated me in the past? Is it the fact that I didn't stick with my boundaries, and wasn't firm enough about something? Is it something else? Is it guilt that's sitting inside me because of something I did, and that in the past, and I haven't let go of?
Yeah.
There's so many different possibilities that it could be, but taking that step back and calming down, doing something to calm down, whether that's just going in another room for a while, and taking some deep breaths, and doing something to bring yourself um, back down into a calmer state, or whether it's going out into nature, or whatever it might be. But it's so important to get calmed down before
Yeah.
you actually deal with anything. So, if um, you've had an email at work and your boss has made you really angry from the way that that email has come across, don't respond, don't react to it.
Yes.
Take that time out, go to the loo, pop outside, take a deep breath, calm down, because actually the boss might have had a bad day, and the way he's written the email has come across, or she has not come across in the way that he wanted it to. It's just come out because he's not actually taken that time to get back in the moment. Um, so there's so many sort of possibilities around things, and it's not always, when we get triggered. Yes, if we're triggered by something, there's probably something we need to look at, but it may also be that that other person needs to look at stuff as well, and actually having a battle with them is not the way to actually deal with it in a kind, loving way. It's taking that step back, it's calming down, having a discussion. This is how it's made me feel, and this is why I feel it's made me feel like that. This is how it's made me feel, so that you can have that conversation, that understanding, um, so that you don't trigger each other again. And this, I'm talking in particularly in, where somebody's having a row with somebody.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
but
there's
you know,
the thing to remember is that we all filter stuff. So the boss, going back to your example of the boss writing the email will be writing it from wherever he is in his head at the time, he or she. It doesn't mean that it was intentionally nasty. It might be, depending where that person is at that particular moment, but it might not be. But it might just be a case of whatever, this is what I want you to do, or this is what needs to be done. The person reading it on the receiving end will be filtering that message through their filters and their experiences and the mood and the emotion that they're feeling in that particular moment. So somebody comes to work happy, up with the joys of spring, gets into work, reads the email. Oh yeah, that's okay. Okay, fine. Someone that's had an argument with their partner before coming to work, had a rubbish journey because of traffic jams or whatever, gets to work in a bad mood, will read that and filter it in a completely different way because they're coming from a different place. So taking that pause, going away, going outside, going to make yourself a coffee, just take yourself off to the loo or whatever, just for a few minutes, breaks that thing for you in time for you to gives you time for you to just calm down. Okay, I'm triggered by that. Something's filtered. It's probably my filters or something's going on. My state of mind as well is at play here. It's not just that person and the way they've sent it. It's how
mm,
we've read it, because the intention that they put might not be the intention we're taking from it because
yeah,
of our beliefs, experiences, blah blah blah, as we've talked about before.
yeah,
Communication is such a such a tricky one, because we all have a responsibility. The two people talking each have a responsibility to make sure that the point is if there is a point to make, that the point is put across as a kind, loving way and not misinterpreted by the other person.
Yes, but you can't guarantee how the other person's going to interpret
Not at all.
the information, can you? And that's why it is our own responsibility to be as kind and loving in everything that we do and say as possible,
Yeah.
so that we're not, yeah, so that we're mindful of how the other person may respond or react to what we're doing or saying. And sometimes if we're a bit busy, we've got a lot going on, and I know I've done it, not intentionally at all, but I've said things quickly or written a quick text to something, and the way it's come across is not the way I intended it, but it sparked somebody because of the way that they've interpreted it, and it would never be my intention to do that. But if we aren't fully centered, if we aren't in the moment, if we aren't in our heart centers, it's very easy to do that, and trigger things. And again, you know, when we're not in our heart centers, it's very easy to react to things rather than respond. And when you're in your heart, um, you learn to let go of things that you don't really need to be worrying about or getting upset about, because they're not worth the energy.
Yeah.
Um, and that way, then you can filter through what's important to deal with and respond to it rather than react to it.
I think that's the important thing. The key to this part, this topic, I think, is just checking in with yourself.
Mm,
In fact, a lot of the topics we talked about, not just this one, but checking in with yourself and where am I emotionally on this scale of emotion? Where am I? Am I angry or frustrated or irate, or am I happy and joyful and or somewhere in the middle? And
yeah,
if I'm angry, then let go and calm down and what's going on here. If you're joyful and happy, keep being joyful and happy, unless you don't want
yeah.
to. But it's something else just popped into my mind. Was It's interesting, and again, this is because you haven't got control over the other person. But have you ever been? I'll ask you a question. But have you ever been in a situation where someone's angry at you, and you're just calm and relaxed, and you're like, yeah,
They
whatever.
don't like it.
They don't like it at all because it.
I don't like it. And I've done that with Alice, my daughter, when she was in her teens. And she was kind of a mirror of me when I was that sort of age as well. And I remember being very calm, and she actually got quite upset about it. And I said to her afterwards, why did you behave like that? And she said, I really wanted an argument with you, Mum, because it would have relieved my stress. And for her, it
Mm,
was a way of getting everything out, to have that argument, which I thought was quite an interesting thing from a 15-year-old, which she was at the
mm.
time. And I wasn't gonna argue with her because I didn't want to get drawn into all of that. Um, and now it's quite interesting, because now if she's upset about something, I know to leave her alone
Yeah,
and let her process it. And then she'll come to me and she'll say, Mum, can we have a chat about this? Because she's ready to talk to me properly about it without all the emotion tied up around whatever it happens to be. Um, and I know her well enough to know that the best thing to do is just leave her alone, and then she'll calm down, and then we can talk properly. Doesn't happen as much these days as it used to, but yeah, it was quite an eye opener for me when she actually turned around and said, I wanted an argument because it relieves my stress. And this is where a lot of stuff had built up over a period of time with her, and she just needed to release that anger, but I didn't want it thrown at me.
yeah. And I think that's the thing. Releasing the energy, releasing the emotion, is absolutely the right thing to do. It's finding ways to do it that doesn't involve somebody else.
Yeah,
And whether that's, go and stand in the middle of a field and scream, or go and sit in your car and shout, or shout into a pillow, or I don't know, take up
yeah.
karate, or take up
Karate, or
squash,
go and
or go and have
yeah,
a
or go to
run,
the
or
gym,
go
or
to the
go for
gym,
a
or
run.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
any of those
use
things are a good way of actually channeling that energy and
and putting it to good use, to
yeah,
a beneficial use.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Anger.
See,
Interesting.
even talking
Interesting.
about anger, I haven't got angry. It's funny because it's just not that I would have got angry, but it's just life is so chilled. It's great
Mm.
when you're in the
I've
moment with it.
certainly had experiences where I've got angry about something. I've kind of left something and left it, and then I've got angry about it, and then I've gone, I need to deal with this. And having that anger has actually given me the strength to go, actually, I can deal with this. It's okay to deal with this. No, this isn't right. It's not. It's not acceptable. Um, so I think, there just kind of for the flip side, there is times when being angry about a situation or a circumstance can just make you deal with something. And when you don't deal with things, the universe has a bit of a habit of bringing it to you again and again and
And
yet
again,
again until you go, okay, I'll deal with it now. Um, so I've certainly had experiences where me being angry about something, and usually it's because I know that I should have dealt with it a long time before, has actually then given me the strength to go, actually, you know what, I am going to deal with this now and let's get this sorted out.
and actually, that's a very interesting point. And funny how we come it towards the end, but in terms of time, but a lot of anger we project onto other people, but it's because we're angry at
With
ourselves.
ourselves,
And I
absolutely.
think that's
The
so.
key.
Like I said with the road rage scenario, it was the driver who cut in that got angry with the person behind them, is because they were angry at themselves because they knew at some subconscious level that they had done a dangerous
Yeah,
maneuver, or whatever.
absolutely. And certainly when I've been angry, I've been angry with myself because I haven't dealt with something, or I haven't, you
Yeah,
know, looked at things in the way I should have done. Um, and so I've got angry with myself, and we've all projected anger out onto
yeah,
others, haven't we? But
absolutely.
actually, it's 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 because we know we should have done something or said something in a different way to the way that we actually dealt with it.
Yeah. So anger has its place. It has there's a reason for it. It's not like it's not it's not like it's irrational necessarily, but look at the reason for it. And is it
Yeah,
something that is being highlighted to you that you need to deal with? Is it because it's triggered something from your past? Is it because it's actually the other person projecting onto you and you're responding to that? But just try and take that step back and release it and get back into your heart center so you can actually find the way to move forward with it, whether that the right response to it rather than
yeah,
reacting.
yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Lovely. Okay, then. Thank you very much for your time, Joe. It's been great chatting to you again today. And until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.